Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Today, Katie Porter drove south from her California congressional district to the Mexican border, where she spent the day at 3 different border facilities asking the kinds of questions that we've seen her so effectively ask in congressional hearings. Katie Porter is a freshman Democratic member of the House who flipped a Republican district in Orange County, California, to win her seat in the House. And so she went to the southern border today as a member of Congress, trying to discover from government officials there exactly who is in charge of what and why. And she saw the conditions there today the way she sees everything, through the eyes of a single mother, which Katie Porter is. She spoke to mothers at the border who have been separated from their families. Katie Porter is a former law professor trained in law school by then Harvard Law School professor Elizabeth Warren. Today, Katie Porter brought her unique brand of systems analysis to those border facilities. The same kind of common sense economic and business analysis we've seen her bring to cross-examining Jamie Dimon, the head of J.P. Morgan Chase, in congressional hearings. And so we are especially fortunate tonight to get Katie Porter's first report on what she found today at the Mexican border. Joining us now is Democratic Congresswoman Katie Porter from California. She's a member of the Financial Services Committee. And Congresswoman Porter, it's about, what, an hour and a half, 2 hours south of your district? Do you find yourself at the Mexican border? And what are your most important findings of the day?
I think one of the big takeaways is the degree to which people those who are presenting themselves at the border or who are being apprehended at the border are processing, being passed through many different kinds of facilities relatively quickly. So one of the things that we asked is, what happens here, what happens there? And often the answer was, well, they're not here very long, so we don't do that. Well, they're not here very long, so we don't do that. So if you think about a family who might be transferred 4 or 5 times from that port of entry or from apprehension until their final destination, at each of those locations, there's a little bit of an effort to say, well, we can't do that here. We hope the next stop addresses that issue. And so that was something I saw particularly with regard to the need for additional medical personnel and medical training for our Border Patrol agents. I spoke directly with those law enforcement officials, and they are finding that those of them who have their EMT training are being very strained. And so I think that's one of the things we can work on funding and making sure that the funding we have given Border Patrol is going to doing prevention and screening, making sure that we are doing that right from the very start when someone's put into the custody of the Border Patrol.
I know you went at the question of who's in charge of what, and one of the things you're looking at is, okay, who is actually in charge of the detention of this person? Who decides? Where is that decision made? Who makes that decision? And why is it this person? What did you discover about that?
So this was one of the most surprising parts of the visit for me. As a law professor, I took immigration law in law school. I did some clinical work, some pro bono work on unaccompanied minors. This was 20 plus years ago. So at the detention facility run by ICE, one of the questions I asked, I met with 4 women, and they would all like to be released back to their minor children. One woman, 2 of her children are homeless now, and living in a car in Orange County, as a matter of fact, as a result of her having lost her job and being in this detention facility. So I asked what is the standard used to decide who gets paroled? When people are paroled, all adults are given ankle bracelets for tracking purposes, dates to check in, and things like that. I said, well, who makes that decision? And I was very surprised to learn that it was the head officer there. It's not an immigration judge who's deciding who gets paroled. And so one of the things that, he freely said to me is that because there's one person kind of in each of these facilities making those parole decisions, that there's a lot of inconsistency potentially across our border with different folks having different experiences in terms of how long they're staying in detention. The officials there were very forthcoming, but they told us that their goal is to have people in detention for about 45 days to 60 days while their asylum claims are being heard and processed. But when we talked directly to the 4 women, they had been there for periods ranging from 5 months to over a year.
And you're talking about people who are being taken from productive jobs that they're doing in California. California has about a 27% population of immigrants, and they are then pulled out of those jobs, disrupting the economic order of that job, and then disrupting the economic viability of their families.
No, absolutely. I mean, I asked all of the women I spoke to who had been in the United States and then were picked up or detained by ICE. One of the women was actually detained when she went into ICE to do her regular check-in. She was then taken to a facility. So she actually had been checking in for months, and at one of her check-ins, she was actually detained and taken to this facility. But one of the things I heard from them is how disruptive this is to their family and then to our local economy. So one of the women who has 4 children, all of them are U.S. citizens, described how her oldest daughter dropped out of college in her final semester, right before she was due to graduate, to care for her younger siblings, the youngest of whom is 9. And so there is really a strain being created by putting people in detention for long periods of time, uncertain release dates, because then we're straining the social safety net to try to care for those families. And I was able to go visit one of the migrant shelters being run by a community organization today and see the incredible work that they're trying to do to meet the needs of these families.
It is Thursday, the 29th of August of 2019, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays, a little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. Well. So much to speak about this morning. Or today, or tonight, depending on when you're listening to this. But if you're alive right now, it is still morning here at the mothership. And I just wanted to make mention very quickly about Lawrence's, shall we say, retraction. Because he did. He called it a retraction. But he did not say that... Well, let's put it this way. He did say that the claims have not been proved to be untrue. I think that's how you would phrase it, so that it is not a double negative, I think. Regardless, Trump has taken it as, well, we all thought he would. It's just too bad that Lawrence was so enthusiastic about getting this out there, especially in the platform he's in. You got to be a little bit more careful than out here in blogging and podcasting world, where you can just throw off conjecture like there's no tomorrow. Because one of my conjectures about his single source, what if it's George Conway? Wondering. Or what if it's Anthony Kennedy's son, who worked in Deutsche Bank? Nah, he wouldn't be the source for Lawrence, but I wondered if it was somebody in the bank. And then I wondered if it was somebody near the White House, because, Lawrence worked on the Hill, was in the White House working for other administrations in the years previous. I wonder if it was George Conway. And that's why you can't get it out there in the world. Okay? Because we all know what's going on with George Conway. Do we? That is, I got to tell you, that is one weird power couple. So, it kind of reminds me of Marlee Matlin. Yeah. And I don't know, I'm having a brain lock this morning. But James Carville, Marlee Matlin, maybe it's not Marlee. But, Matlin, and Carville, they were an odd couple of sorts, weren't they? Playing both sides of the fence. But, it somewhat bothered me, but it didn't seem as, shall we say, sycophantic on one side. I just have not quite figured out that dynamic. It's interesting. I wonder if it's all part of the plan, though. And regardless, now you got Trump out there, trying to make hay over, there's no Russia, which actually disregards the fact that there's this thing called the Mueller report. Mueller. And, he colluded with the Russians. It's right there. It's just that he's the president of the United States. And you can't, apparently, because of these OLC memos that just keep popping up, you can't do that. Now, I got to tell you, if he was black and wearing a tan suit, and they found out that he had some business dealings with Russia, we'd be shutting down government right now and installing something else. Because everybody in that administration would be going to jail until they could figure out what the hell is going on. Two types of justice, I suppose. Jeez. All right. Well, that's only one story. Because we got a million others, too. I mean, let alone what Trump is doing on the world stage. Oh, God. Oh, God, it's just so scary. And Vlad's involved in it, too. But actually, there's something else that's a little bit more heartening, shall we say. And that is the Scandinavian teenager who sailed into New York and up the Hudson. And apparently, I think they're going to be outside. Are they going to be outside Wall Street or the UN? I can't remember. But she's going to take her movement of shame, shall we say. The kids shall lead them. And talk about climate change and environmental concern. And that enthusiasm, she sailed across on a nice catamaran, too. God, that's a lovely ship. Boy. And she brought a friend. They're going to probably speak about, fires burning and all sorts of stuff. And we have a little bit of environmental news here today about how, money sometimes doesn't talk. It can actually swim away. If you're not careful, if you're not, it could. And so the Scandinavian teen, and I'm sorry, everybody knows her name except me this morning because I'm having a brain lock. It is still heartening because on one hand, we have a story about another one of these. I need to trademark this term, Lone Wolf Pup. We seem to be having a bunch of those nowadays. Where are they coming from? What's triggering them? Well, I have my suspicions. Speaking of trigger, this is another one I wanted to bring up about Karl Rove getting triggered by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She put out one of her, little video statements, YouTube statements, or is it TikTok? I don't know. What are the kids doing these days? I don't know. It's hard for me to keep up. See, this is what's bad about old people, and now I'm starting to fall into it. I have never, this is an aside, I have never been one to be afraid of technology, and now we call them new platforms. I guess I need to go to TikTok. Okay. Mostly I don't do these things because a while back, when Networks Radio was first starting, we were getting hit by some bugs out there, shall we say. Little viruses. And fortunately, the team, and it still remains deep, but competent. And we had to go through the registry and get all this junk out of there. Oh, my God. And it wasn't just the broadcaster either. It was, we couldn't figure out what the hell was going on. Now we have a little bit more suspicions about what happened then. But regardless, I tend to not go to a lot of different platforms, especially with the working machines, even though the working machines are there also to research and do those sorts of those sorts of things so that we can do our broadcast. But I tend to not go to like Snapchat and because you never know. You might be, locked into some, I don't know, Macedonian troll farm. You never know. You never know. So that was an aside. Karl Rove is triggered by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Now, to just set the table here a bit, AOC put out one of her, visual YouTube, TikTok, Snapchat, whatever, in which she, insists, and it's not hard to insist, that the GOP, the Republicans, are destroying democracy. That's their platform, to destroy democracy. Karl Rove, of course, has to go on Fox. Karl Rove. And then talks about how she's just a flamethrower. She's just so terrible. I mean, what a whiner. Karl Rove, the guy that, did all of his little weird rat effing dirty tricks. How about, putting out some information to, erroneous information, for instance, about, say, a political opponent who apparently has some sort of pedophile charges in another state. Put that out there a few days before the election. Turns out, there was no charges in another state. But you just put it out there, and you create the reality. And then while you're responding to that reality, they're off making another one. Which was a nice way of saying that we'll lie the F out of stuff to win because, hey, we have no morality. We're here to destroy democracy. Because they want a republic. A republic is a lot easier to change into something else, I got to tell you. It is a representative democracy. We don't need to add the republic onto it anymore. That was tacked on because there's a certain element in our body politic that just needs to be told what to do, and then they can tell other people what to do and forget about the representative part. At least for the mob, which is us. But yeah, Karl Rove, of all people, defending the saving of democracy? Give me a break. Mitch McConnell is the result of Karl Rovian politics. In fact, not even so much a result. They're team members. They've been planning this for a long, long time. Well, what's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Well, of course, at the top, that was California Representative Katie Porter down there in Orange County. My old stomping grounds where I grew up. And she visited 3 different facilities near the California-Mexico border to see how migrants were being treated at different points in their journeys. And you know what? It's not really good. Okay. Cruelty is the point. It's supposed to be a deterrent. All right. Well, on the rest of the menu, the Trump administration argued the states have no right to sue the federal government to protect children. They're quite arbitrary about what the states can and cannot do, aren't they? Another lone wolf pup is arrested for plotting a mass killing to protect himself from illegal aliens. I wonder where he's getting that. And Trump said FEMA is ready for Tropical Storm Dorian, but the agency has been without a permanent leader for more than 5 months. Well, it's not just FEMA, but right now it's FEMA. After the break, we then move to the chef's table, where following one of the driest winters on record, Australia's drought will last well into its spring. And the world's largest salmon producer warned it will stop buying Brazilian soy for its fish farms unless Bolsonaro curbs Amazon deforestation. Told you, money doesn't just talk, it can swim away. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page, right there at the social media scroll, is our chat room link, definitely located by superior graphic design. And the chat room link is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of the page, from the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, is the link to our Patreon page, and please do become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio. This is a broken record every day at this point. I'm sorry, but that's the way it is. And your recurring patronage, that recurring contribution goes a long way for helping us pay our bills and continue resisting as the founders originally intended so many decades ago, even before the signing of the Constitution, let alone the drafting. So, and really, all kidding aside, you're our biggest contributor, and we would be unable to do this without you. And we still have to purchase some newish machinery. Did you hear that a bunch of the airlines are not going to allow you to take your MacBook Pro into checked baggage? And then, of course, you got to turn it off when you go onto the plane because of, in 2015, they had a recall because of a battery issue. And now, all of a sudden, they're not going to allow you to bring your MacBook Pro on. And I've been hearing it doesn't just stop at the MacBook Pro. It's any Mac laptop is going to be under this rule. So, regardless, we still need to get a newish MacBook because that broadcaster has been broadcasting for quite a while. And the other ancillary machines that we need that are not dedicated to just the power to broadcast. So all that stated, thank you for your generosity. We would be unable to do this without you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Thank you, Tom. And you can follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. And most importantly, I do post the show notes and links diary on Daily Kos about 10 minutes before showtime. That is an integral part to this whole multimedia operation. Since we are way past the overhead projector years, the show notes and links diary is really quite important. All right, PowerPoint. It's like a PowerPoint. What's that? It's like a payphone. What's that? Alrighty. If you would like to follow the show on Twitter, do so at Cookbook West and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever podcasts can be found. We're there in the W's. I got to get out of this Oregon speak. And the only reason we speak in Oregon like this is because they came from somewhere else, like Oklahoma. Crick. People calling a creek a crick. You get a crick in your neck, and the fish swim in the creek. Jeez. Piano. I hear piano all the time. Where did that come from? Piano. I only know what I read, and I don't read very well. Hey, it's Thursday, almost Friday. We got to gear up for the weekend. And it's Labor Day weekend. Monday's a holiday. Yeah, got to gear up. Get that banking done. All right, let's get into this because we're just eating up time. Breaks? Who cares about a traditional terrestrial radio break at the bottom of the hour? Who cares? We don't need no stinking breaks at that time. We'll take them when we want. Lisa Needham brings us this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The Department of Agriculture is going to the mat to defend its right to feed school children less healthy food. Well, look, in a capitalist society, how do you make a profit? By withholding services for the money that you've been paid to provide those services. The only way to make money is to, skimp and save here and there. And one way is to feed the kids cardboard, because cardboard right now is a lot cheaper than actual food. Scientists sued to try to stop them. States sued to try to stop them. Now, as to the latter, however, the administration has offered an intriguing theory in a brief filed on Monday night, late Monday night, right after the news cycle. That states cannot sue the federal government to protect children. I'm laughing because it might work. This argument might seem surprising, given this administration's enthusiasm for letting states sue it in other contexts, such as obliterating health care. But when it comes to states wanting to feed school children more whole grains and less sodium, the administration wants to be crystal clear that is a bridge too far. Because Dumas Dunny likes a lot of sodium on his french fries. In late 2018, the USDA rolled back the Obama-era standards that it had required healthier school lunches. There was no real reason for it to say for that some school districts and lots of conservatives just didn't like them. They did so, although the rules really weren't anything radical and were based on the overall Dietary Guide for Americans issued by the United States Department of Health. The lawsuit by the state seeks to reinstate the guidelines that were in effect under Obama, as they were demonstrably healthier. But the administration is arguing that the states don't have a right to sue on behalf of the children in their state because the state has no legal interest in protecting its citizens from the federal government. What? In other words, states have no right to push back against the encroachment of federal rules, a stance which is completely at odds with the position Republicans purport to favor. But look, that was all a campaign. Playing to the base. Oh, yeah, we're all for states' rights, because states' rights really means, kicking the black man, kicking brown people. Your state has a right to do that. Sue the federal government because the federal government is encroaching upon civil rights, upon health standards. Well, this isn't just on food, of course. They're trying to lower methane. The allowable limit on methane, lower that so that you can, go over. It's what they want to do. They want to push out more methane. I wonder what more methane up in the atmosphere would do. We're way past opening up the Northwest Passage now. Way past. They're looking at Greenland. Well, the administration likes states' rights when it leads to conservative goals like the destruction of Obamacare, but it hates them when states want to help children. Cruelty is the point. It's a policy. It's a plank on the platform. Next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays, is out of WBZ Channel 4, CBS Boston. Paul Staber writing a copy here. A 19-year-old from Boston allegedly told police that he was plotting a school shooting at High Point University in North Carolina. Freshman Paul A. Staber is charged with 2 felony counts of having weapons on campus and communicating a threat of mass violence on educational property. I guess if you don't actually do the mass shooting, you don't qualify for all 3 names. You only get the initial? What is this, Paul Alfred Staber? Paul Allen? Come on. Mass killers, even those who are alleged, get 3 names. What kind of journalistic practice is this? The university told the police department on Tuesday that its security officers knew of a student who had 2 guns and ammunition in his dorm room. Police officers responded, seizing the firearms and arresting Staber. Now, according to court documents, Staber told police in an interview he planned on shooting up the campus. Another officer wrote that Staber had a plan and timeline to kill people. Staber had been watching videos to learn how to carry out a mass shooting, Assistant District Attorney Lori Wickline said in court. He told officers that he definitely had a plan, something that he had been thinking about since Christmas of last year. Wow, Christmas is a great time to plan on killing people. She later added, he had been recently watching videos of the Charleston mass shooting in South Carolina and other mass shootings so that he could learn what to do and what not to do. Well, I guess he found out that he shouldn't have been doing the whole thing, in this reporter's opinion. He's being held in jail on a $2 million bond. Documents stated that he lived on, Commonwealth Avenue in Boston's Back Bay. I wonder what that means. What kind of anti-segregation movement, anti-busing movement occurred in that area back in the day? I'm trying to think. Oh, it's just, I don't know. It's so far back, I can't remember. Can you? Do you know? Back to the article. The incident illustrates the importance of public reporting suspicious activity to authorities. High Point Police said in a statement, information from the public is often the critical first step in preventing acts of mass violence. Apparently, his roommate said that Staber had brought guns within the past week and planned to shoot himself and his roommate if Staber didn't get into a fraternity and the roommate did. Now, one of his schoolmates at a private school in the Boston's Back Bay area, the Newman School, said Staber's arrest didn't surprise him in the slightest. He said there were warning signs that Staber could be dangerous. Basically, every single day during class, all he did was look up the NRA, look up guns, politicians. He would look up politicians, both Democratic and Republican, and just stare at them. Newman schoolmaster Harry Lynch issued a statement following Staber's arrest. We are, of course, very sad to see these media reports from North Carolina, which come as a complete surprise to us. Beyond that, we would not, as a matter of school policy, comment publicly about current or former students. Staber's father, who came down from Massachusetts, sat in court for the brief hearing where Staber appeared via video link. This is any parent's worst nightmare, defense attorney John Bryson said in court. He's obviously very concerned about his son. Well, Dad, I guess this is what happens when you let your kid watch Fox video. Of Share Blue Media brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Trump proclaimed yesterday, Wednesday, that FEMA is ready for Tropical Storm Dorian, but the agency has been without a permanent leader for more than 5 months. It's a feature, not a bug. The storm is forecast to hit Puerto Rico and then the east coast of Florida. Well, as we know, it didn't hit Puerto Rico with all the force it could have, but it hit it pretty damn hard nonetheless, and now it's on its way to Mar-a-Lago. No word on whether Trump wants to nuke it before it gets there, or maybe he wants to wait until it's on shore. Nah, not Mar-a-Lago. But trust me, all those FEMA funds that he took away to put on the border wall, if that storm hits Mar-a-Lago and does even like the smallest amount of damage, a palm tree frond gets broken, he's going to get millions, if not $1 billion to rebuild. And this also goes along with the same part of their platform plank of deconstructing the administrative state. Disaster relief? That's supposed to help, not hurt. Cruelty is the point, of course. All right, let's get to our break. And when we get back from that break, we are going to go through weather from around the world and finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. Mosquitoes are precision-guided to their prey by plumes of carbon dioxide, heat, and humidity. Sort of like how we follow our noses sometimes.
It's like us passing a restaurant or something. We might look at the signs, we might look at the display case, we might smell. It's like a lot of things they do. They're very smart, unfortunately.
Robert Hurt, a chemical engineer at Brown University. As the skeeters get closer to us, he says, they also even smell and taste.
They have these things called gustatory receptors. So they taste chemicals associated with your sweat. You have bacteria on your skin. The bacteria metabolize compounds in your sweat, and the mosquitoes detect those.
You know what happens next? The bite. But Hurt and his colleagues have discovered a novel way to block them, with graphene, the substance composed of a single layer of carbon atoms. Hurt and his team asked volunteers to stick their arms into a box full of mosquitoes.
We don't actually disclose who those subjects were, but we were closely involved.
In other words, he will neither confirm nor deny that he and his colleagues were subjects. So whoever the subjects were, when they had no skin protection, the mosquitoes swarmed and bit the skin. However, with a graphene-based patch on the skin, the mosquitoes landed but seemed uninterested and largely didn't bite. Hurt thinks that's because the film blocks those chemical cues the mosquitoes kind of taste on the skin. And when the film was dry, at least, it also physically blocked the mosquitoes from plunging their tiny hypodermic needles into the prospective victim. The results are in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. Mosquitoes could still sense the CO2 in your breath, of course, but when they get there, if you're wearing graphene, there wouldn't be too much to bite. And Hurt says the graphene film is cheap, just a few cents per square foot, and breathable. So if they can figure out how to keep the material mosquito-proof when moist, they'll be one step closer to graphene-laced anti-mosquito clothing. So has Bill Gates called yet? See if this research could lead to another weapon against malaria?
He hasn't, but he calls all the time anyway, so I'm always, trying to put him off when he calls. But if he does, I'll talk to him, yeah.
Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
Hold your ground! Hold your ground! Sons of Gondor! Of Rohan! My brothers! I see in your eyes the same fear that would take the heart of me. A day may come when the courage of men fails, when we forsake our friends and break all bonds of fellowship. But it is not this day. An hour of wolves and shattered shields when the age of men comes crashing down. But it is not this day. This day we fight. By all that you hold dear on this good earth, I bid you stand! Men of the West!
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
In 2017, approximately 1 in 6 high school students reported a sports or physical activity-related concussion. Immediate symptoms of a concussion include headache, nausea, and double vision. Long-term, the effects of such injuries, particularly those that are more severe, can be life-changing. Healthcare providers, coaches, trainers, and parents should be aware of the symptoms of a concussion and how to treat them. A concussion protocol should be developed that includes withholding an athlete from practice and competition until all symptoms are resolved. While concussions cannot always be prevented, they can be treated in a way that decreases the chances of long-term health problems. Thank you for joining us on A Minute of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. It doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution, and you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage, because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
The 13th Amendment, ratified in 1865, that abolished slavery and involuntary servitude, has one enormous exception. I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. The exception is, and I quote the amendment, except as punishment for crime. And today, the United States, which has 4% of the world's population, has 22% of all the world's prisoners. As Brian Stevenson, founder of the Equal Justice Initiative and author of Just Mercy, writes in his contribution to the 1619 Project, quote, central to understanding the practice of mass incarceration and excessive punishment is the legacy of slavery. After the Civil War, Southern states passed the Black Codes, a series of laws that locked up and subjugated former slaves. Again quoting Stevenson. Nixon's war on drugs, mandatory minimum sentences, 3 strikes laws, children tried as adults, broken window policing. These policies were not as expressly racialized as the Black Codes, but their implementation has been essentially the same. Stevenson points out that there is new language that has replaced the Black Codes: driving while black, sitting in a coffee shop while black, in a word, living while black. And in the same vein, he writes, quote, it has been black people and brown people who are disproportionately targeted, stopped, suspected, incarcerated, and shot by the police. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU, because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1996. That was the day the workers at the Lusty Lady Strip Club in San Francisco made their final push to make their case for the right to join a union. They made history by winning the union vote 57-15. SEIU Local 790 led the historic campaign. What started the union drive was the windows at the private booths where the ladies performed. The windows had one-way glass. That meant patrons could look in, but performers could not see out. They worried that the men could videotape them or take photographs without their permission. When management refused to change the windows, the women started talking union. Soon, other workplace issues arose as the women furthered their union discussion. One woman recalled, "We started to discuss other problems at work, like being forced to come in when you were sick." She went on, "Our first thought was to organize a petition, but we were really concerned about individual dancers being scapegoated and fired because that happened on a regular basis." Another participant in the union drew on her personal background as a reason for getting involved. She noted, "I had been raised to support union efforts and the workers' cause. I hadn't ever worked at a place where there was any sort of struggle to be a part of." The women ran a successful campaign to unionize. Despite winning the vote, management dragged its feet in negotiating their first contract. The women went on strike, and management locked them out. Few men dared to cross the picket line to enter the club, and within a few days, management capitulated and returned to the bargaining table where the women signed their first contract.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's
time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
Trump's slow crawl toward fascism is speeding up. The Trump administration issuing a new federal policy on Wednesday that says children born overseas to some American parents serving in the military or working for the federal government may no longer automatically claim U.S. citizenship if their parents lived in the U.S. for less than 5 years. Instead, officials said those parents must apply for citizenship on behalf of their children before they turn 18 years old. Hurricane Dorian thankfully swept by Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands on Wednesday, but is now on track for what could make landfall as a Category 3 or 4 storm in Florida over the weekend. While most of us were collectively concerned about a potential hit on Puerto Rico, the president instead went on the attack, tweeting, quote, "Puerto Rico is one of the most corrupt places on earth. Their political system is broken, and their politicians are either incompetent or corrupt. Congress approved billions of dollars last time, more than any place else has ever gotten, and it is sent to crooked polls. No good." Trump has repeated a false claim that Congress sent $92 billion of aid to Puerto Rico. In reality, Congress has allocated $42.5 billion to disaster relief for Puerto Rico, but the island, as of May, had only received less than $14 billion. Oh, and then Trump said he was, quote, "the best thing that ever happened to Puerto Rico." Yesterday, we reported to you what Lawrence O'Donnell told his viewers the night before, that, quote, one source close to Deutsche Bank told him that the bank has Trump's tax returns and that Trump had received loans co-signed by, quote, Russian billionaires close to Vladimir Putin. At the time, I was troubled by the fact that the story was based on a single source. Although O'Donnell stressed during the original segment that it was from a single source and hadn't been verified by NBC, the network still received a letter from Trump lawyer Charles Harder demanding that they immediately and prominently retract and apologize for O'Donnell's reporting. So he did.
Last night on this show, I discussed information that wasn't ready for reporting. I repeated statements a single source told me about the president's finances and loan documents with Deutsche Bank, saying, if true, as I discussed the information, was simply not good enough. I did not go through the rigorous verification and standards process here at MSNBC before repeating what I heard from my source. Had it gone through that process, I would not have been permitted to report it. I should not have said it on air or posted it on Twitter. I was wrong to do so. This afternoon, attorneys for the president sent us a letter asserting the story is false. They also demanded a retraction. Tonight, we are retracting the story. We don't know whether the information is inaccurate, but the fact is we do know it wasn't ready for broadcast, and for that, I apologize.
Sadly, if this information does prove to be true, O'Donnell's impatience and horribly bad journalistic judgment only serve to give Trump more fuel in his attacks on the media. I also wonder why NBC didn't just call their bluff. With a lawsuit comes discovery. They'd have to turn over all the documents. Just saying. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand has ended her presidential campaign, narrowing the Democratic field to 20 candidates. Gillibrand became the first senator to drop out of the presidential race, a decision she announced after failing to gain enough donors or the poll standing needed to win a place on the September debate stage. And that stage is now set. Only 10 of the remaining 20 candidates qualified by Wednesday's deadline, so it'll be just one stage, one night, Thursday, September 12th on ABC. The 10 candidates who will be participating are Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, Cory Booker, Amy Klobuchar, Andrew Yang, Julian Castro, and Beto O'Rourke. The Trump administration is set to announce on Thursday that it intends to sharply curtail the regulation of methane emissions, a major contributor to climate change, this according to an industry official with knowledge of the plan. The EPA, in a proposed rule, will aim to eliminate federal government requirements that the oil and gas industry put in place technology to inspect for and repair methane leaks from wells, pipelines, and storage facilities. What's even more heinous about this is that major oil and gas companies have in fact opposed this move, just as some other industries have opposed the Trump administration's other major moves to dismantle climate change and other environmental rules put in place by Barack Obama. Big Brexit drama in the UK, where Prime Minister Boris Johnson got the Queen to okay a suspension of Parliament, cutting short the amount of time opponents will have to block a no-deal Brexit. Parliament returns from its summer break on September 3rd. The 5-week suspension starts a few days later. The UK is set to leave the EU on October 31st. In response to this move, thousands of people took to the streets across the UK on Wednesday night, including crowds in central London who surrounded the Palace of Westminster. Clive Lewis, a UK Labour Party member of Parliament, said, quote, "If Boris Johnson thinks he can suspend Parliament and force through no deal, he has another thing coming. We will build a mass movement to save democracy, and everyone who wants to stop this travesty must get ready to mobilize, demonstrate, and resist." And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com. Just click donate.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 62 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high of between 93 and 95, about the same as it was yesterday. We didn't get nearly as hot as we were expected. We had mostly a cloud cover yesterday, quite humid, and thunderstorms and rain activity in the area, though little fell here at the mothership. Sunny conditions should prevail throughout the day. A small chance of rain, again, about 10 to 20%. And will be partly cloudy later on. Winds are light and variable out of the west currently, and will pick up out of the west at 5 to 10 miles per hour in a few hours. Overnight lows in the mid to low 60s. Tomorrow's high should be in the low 90s. Winds will be light and variable. Still a small chance of rain overnight. Grass pollen is low. That air quality index is now in the moderate range at 53 parts per million. And the daytime UV index remains high at 7. Barometric pressure is rising at 29.96 inches. Visibility is at 10 miles. And relative humidity is at 70%. Come on. This is tropical. It's almost like being on the beach, drinking a Mai Tai, except it's a rocky beach here. We're at the river, not the coast. All right. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 75 degrees and fair. Paris is 77 and partly cloudy. Rome is 88 and fair, though they do have a heat advisory. Kiev is 82 degrees and fair. Kabul, 85 and partly cloudy. Hong Kong is 80 degrees with a rain shower. Tokyo is 85 and partly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 55 degrees with rain and wind. San Francisco, California is 63 and cloudy, and New York is 77 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Anonymous worker bees at Reuters bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Australia's spring is expected to be warmer and drier than average. Following one of the driest winters on record, the country's Bureau of Meteorology said today. The forecast provided little relief to Australia's farmers hit by a prolonged drought that has parched grain-growing areas as well as cattle and sheep farming regions. It also means the country faces a long, tough bushfire season. Fire authorities warned earlier in the week. The Weather Bureau forecast warmer than average days and nights for most of Australia over the next 3 months. Only some parts of southern Australia and Tasmania would see cooler conditions, it said in its outlook for the Southern Hemisphere spring, which runs through September through November.
Je te donne seulement l'amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Even more anonymous worker bees at Reuters bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Maui ASA, the largest salmon producer in the world, will stop buying Brazilian soy for its fish farms unless the South American country curbs Amazon deforestation, the Norwegian company said today. Wildfires raging in Brazil's rainforest surged this year while environmental protections were cut, triggering an international backlash against right-wing President Jair Bolsonaro and his administration. The treatment of the Amazon is unacceptable. Maui will have to consider finding other sources to feed raw materials unless the situation improves, Chief Sustainability Officer Katarina Martin said in a statement. Well, apparently, money not only talks in Portuguese, but it can swear in Norwegian. Good thing, too. All right, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. But you do know that Netroots Radio is going to broadcast on. We'll meet up tomorrow for Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre. Tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin l'âge tendre. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.